Welcome.
A notable welcome to all you music lovers.
To
Journey
to the stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back
your host,
And
our dad,
Brian.
Fraser.
What was that ruckus?
What ruckus?
Hey everyone, and welcome to Journey to the Stage with Brian Fraser. Thanks for tuning in. We've got a great episode with a very, very talented artist today that I'm really excited to chat with. Before we dive into our conversation, if you haven't done so already, wherever you're listening, if you could just hit that follow button, that like button, leave a rating or review or subscribe. Those things really, really are such a huge help to an indie podcaster like myself, and always very much appreciated when you do that. So thank you. My guest today is a gifted singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist who has a brand new album out called Reckless Thoughts. It is a real pleasure for me to welcome to Journey to the Stage, Maia Sharp. Maia, thank you for joining me. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me.
So you are in Nashville, and so we're recording this. It's right before the holidays. Do you get snow in your little corner of the world over there, or what's that like right now?
Well, I think I've been here for 4 winters now, and I think we've had snow for 3 of them. So wow. One thing, unlike my hometown of Los Angeles, though, you kind of never know around here what you're going to get.
Yeah.
It could feel like a sunny day, and then the next day it's an ice storm and maybe a tornado thrown in, so no telling, and I'm just kind of ready for anything.
And you're from California,
Yeah.
So you went from earthquakes to tornadoes. I don't know which I would prefer. Tornadoes scare me.
Yeah, the first one, the one that came really like right through my neighborhood was in March of 2020. And I was such a California fool. Like, I had no idea what it looked like, sounded like, smelled like. There's a sense that people who have seen one before, they know when to go hide. And I was the one that was like still looking out the window when it roared up on us. But now I know.
Oh, wow.
But I think still I would vote for the tornado just because at least you get a little bit of warning.
So we kind of did things in reverse order. So I was born in LA and moved to the Central Valley part of California. You were born in Central Valley and moved to LA from
right.
Visalia, as we talked about before we started recording. And so you went, what part of LA did you move to?
Well, when I was 5, we moved down to LA. I lived in the San Fernando Valley all through high school and college. And then, I was there, for the Valley Girl stuff.
Nice. Yeah.
I even, oh my God, even thinking about it, I say like more. I even shopped at the Galleria and the whole deal. When I moved out, I moved into like the mid-Wilshire area around, Fairfax and La Brea. Wilshire.
Yeah.
I was there for probably 22 years. I thought I was going to be in my home state for my whole life. There was no reason to move outside of California. I still love it. I still feel like a California girl. But about 4 years ago, it just made a lot more sense to not try to live and work there and to take a swing at here. I've been coming to Nashville for probably 20 years or so, trying to take a regular trip here because there's just such a bevy of songwriters here, and I have a lot of friends here now. But it never felt like it could potentially be home until then, like a number of stars aligned for it. And I'm happy to report it feels like home.
But as we mentioned earlier, there's so many Californians that are living there now, so that's got to be helpful. And it sounds like you've got a good network of friends and other connections, so good for you. So I was introduced to you, not as a person, but as an artist. It was like the early 2000s, maybe 2001, 2002, I can't remember, when you co-wrote and co-performed on an album with Art Garfunkel and Buddy Mondlock. It was Everything Waits to Be Noticed, which really, really is an absolutely incredible album. Every single song on there it's just easy to love. It's a really good album. And growing up, a huge fan of Simon and Garfunkel personally, and then their solo careers. When I bought that album, I was like, wow, this is so good. And I would love to start there a little bit. And then we'll kind of go back a little bit in your own personal timeline, artist timeline. How did that album come about? How did your connection to Art Garfunkel come about?
Billy Mann is how that whole idea got started and how it got seen all the way through. He produced the album, and he was a mutual friend of all three of us.
Oh, wow.
He had the idea that our three voices would probably blend well, and also Art, who had written prose but had not written songs up until that point, he thought that the two of us, Buddy and I, would be a good place for Art to start. He felt like that was kind of a safe place, you know? So we actually started writing those songs based on Art's prose. Like we started with a couple of phrases that he had already written. So he's basically already a co-writer before he even says anything in the room, because we're starting with his seeds. His ideas were so rich and layered and just beautiful language. And by the way, he speaks like that also. Like it isn't just the prose in the book. When you're having a conversation with him, I'm pretty sure I learned a new vocabulary word every time we talk. And he's really dry. He's really funny. He can definitely be serious, but there's a lot of poetry in there. And we started, I guess the first time we got together to write, I want to say we wrote 3 songs, and all of them were started with a couple to 4 lines of what Art had already written. And then we did 3 or 4 writing trips. At that point, the 3 of us were living in 3 different cities. So Art was in New York and Buddy was in Nashville. I was in Los Angeles. So we alternated. Like we did, our first writing trip was everybody met in Nashville, and then everybody met in New York, then LA. And then we went back to Nashville to write a couple more and to record there. So by the time we got to that point, and I don't even know over how long this was, I want to say it was maybe almost a year, maybe a little less than that. At that point, we had a pretty good pool of songs that the 3 of us, or the 4 of us actually, Billy was in on a few of those also. The 4 of us had written in various combinations, and then we looked to a couple of outside songs.
Oh yeah, there's I think a song written by Garth Brooks on there.
Yeah, then we had the recording experience that I can't even tell you. I remember vividly, like it was last week, standing next to Art because he wanted to sing unison at the same time. We intentionally avoided just 3-part harmony everywhere. So it tended to be like unison with like a cascading 3rd part, or like one low harmony with a unison, or Art is doing like a unison with himself above us playing, a 2-part harmony. We really tried to mix it up. So when you do hear that 3-part harmony, you haven't for a while, so it's something that you actually wanted to hear, right? There was a moment where Art requested that him and I do our unison on the mic at the same time, and he kicked into his just turbo Art, breathy, giant long note, and I had to match the tonality of that. And I don't know how many years he has on me, but it's probably 20-ish or 25-ish. He kicked my ass. I literally had to pull up a stool and lean on it because I was getting faint from trying to push through as much air as he was to sound anything like him, for the unison to sound like anything. And I finally got there, but it was a lot of work. And it was just a Tuesday for him. That's just how he sings. It was so strong and so breathy and so perfect that I knew I had a couple things to learn after that.
Just as an artist yourself and as a singer, that must have been pretty surreal because, as a fan, Art has the voice of an angel. He has one of the greatest instruments I have ever heard somebody use. He is just incredible. And I can imagine holding a note like that, shaping it, right? So you match him tonally. It must have just been so difficult. I can picture that in the studio, and I know Art just from reading about him. He's a perfectionist in the studio, and
Yeah.
that must have been quite an experience. I met Art, I think it was 1992, and had it was a show where he and Paul had played together for the first time in a long time. It was at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion in LA. I know you know where that's at, and got a chance to connect with him, got my picture taken with him. He could not have been
cool.
more charming and kind, and just very, very nice. It was late, and he stood there and we had a nice conversation. But I know what you mean about his vocabulary is massive because he reads the dictionary, at least he used to. So he was constantly learning new words. And, just one more note on that. I had Carol Kay, bass player. I don't know if you know who she is, but she was part of the Wrecking Crew.
Fantastic.
And she she recorded several songs with Simon and Garfunkel when they did some recording out here on the West Coast. And she said her and Art would start talking in the studio because he's so easy to talk to. And they'd get in trouble from the booth. Okay, guys, we need to get going here. But just because he's so conversational and warm that way. So what an experience that must have been, because I know you were a fan before. But yeah, have you had any contact with Art since then?
Yeah, we actually used to get together for lunch whenever he would come to LA or whenever I would go to New York. It's been a minute, though, probably 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
But I remember the last time we got together. It was a lot of fun.
So I'm curious, because you've been at this for a while now. You've been, recording for 25 plus years and stuff. And but when you look back at the beginning, when you first started on this pathway, like what was it? What was your motivation? What made you say this is the path I'm going to follow? Like, what was that decision process like for you?
Well, the music path started with me thinking I was going to be a saxophone player.
Oh, really?
I went to college for that, and I was playing in all the jazz ensembles, and started playing around town and played it in a lot of horn sections. Did a little bit of traveling with that. I have to say, there are a few things more fun than playing in an R&B horn section.
Wow.
That was really a blast. Not sure how to make a living at it, really, but wow, that was fun. And I started writing music for saxophone, and it was fine. I knew I was close to what I was supposed to be doing. I was in Los Angeles, so I was hustling for work, and like a lot of people do in Los Angeles. But there was something about it just wasn't quite aligning. I grew up listening to Bonnie Raitt and Joni Mitchell and Ricky Lee Jones and James Taylor and Jackson Brown and that and that vibe. And although I was enjoying listening to and digging into Sonny Rollins and Wayne Shorter and John Coltrane and Cannonball Adderley and all that stuff, that was a lot of fun, but it wasn't quite all of it yet. So I was playing with my friends that I was going to school with, and they're playing in all these like indie rock Americana bands around the city. So I start going to see them and realize that's actually kind of more in line with what I want to do. So I started writing songs, even though I had been kind of writing prose here and there, but I wasn't doing that seriously. So I started writing songs about halfway through college, and then I got the nerve up to present a couple of these songs to some of the writers that my friends were playing with, and asked if they wanted to co-write. I did also have the huge advantage. My father, Randy Sharp, is a wonderful songwriter. He's had a lot of success, and he's just a craft forward, just great person to learn from. Also, he's also just really easygoing and helpful and great at it. So my first co-write experience was with him. So I feel like I had the opportunity to learn maybe more quickly than I would have otherwise. And so I found the nerve to go present a couple songs. One of them was to the writer, leader of a band that some friends of mine were playing in. His name is Mark Addison. He liked the songs and said yes to the co-write. I didn't have anything happen. I didn't have, a publishing deal or any kind of label interest or anything like that. We wrote a song that he handed into his publisher, who pitched it to Cher's producer, who pitched it to Cher, and then we had a Cher cut. So once I had
Wow.
something in the fire now,
Yeah.
and I was already falling for the writing itself. Like that just felt right. I wasn't sure how I was going to make it work as a job yet. I knew because I had seen through my dad that it could be a successful career, but I still wasn't kind of seeing my path to that. Once I had the Cher cut, and then just the pitching around of that song got some interest with the label that turned out to be my first label. And so the Cher album and my first record deal pretty much happened in the same year. Hearing a voice like Cher's that you've heard for years, hearing that
absolutely.
voice sing your song, like, okay, I'm totally hooked on that. And if I could do that, I mean, really, you asked about like where it started. If I could have just been a writer and not pursued being an artist, I may have stayed there for a while. But I knew that if I wanted to get all the songs that I was writing and that I was proud of and that I wanted to get out into the world, if I wanted them to be heard, chances are I was not going to be able to find another artist to record all of these songs, because I saw how hard it was to just get that one. So I was going to have to figure out my introverted stuff and get myself up on a stage and be the center. Like I had been used to being the sideman, on sax or maybe a harmony vocal, maybe a little bit of keyboard or something. But like to be the artist was not really who I was. Like I had to really push through some stuff to get up on a stage and to claim that spot. It took me a long time actually to enjoy that. At first I was just doing it because I wanted the songs out there. Now I really love it, but it all started with the writing.
I'm so curious. It sounds like, having access obviously to your dad and being able to learn from him in a place that is nurturing and comfortable and, informed, having a dad like that must have been such a great help. I'm curious about maybe other writers that you have found. You've mentioned some great talents. You've mentioned people like James Taylor and so on. Who are maybe some of those writers that kind of helped you get the bug? Like, wow, these people know how to do it. I want to be able to do it to that level. Like, what were some of those artists and writers for you?
Well, Paul Simon was a huge one for me. Ricky Lee Jones. Listened to a lot of Ricky Lee Jones. Joni Mitchell, for sure. Mm-hmm. I was hooked on a Willis Allen Ramsey album that came out in the 70s that was like one of my folks' favorite. I was raised on their choices, which were great. I can't even tell. I fully appreciate how fortunate I am, because I have a lot of friends whose parents were listening to things. They were like, they could not wait to go choose their own music. Now, when I choose my own music, it's what they were already listening to anyway, So yeah, I think when I first started to break it down, probably Paul Simon was that first one where I was like, oh man, I wish I'd thought of that. Ooh, the twist and the turn, the implication.
Yeah.
It's literal for a while and then it's just off the rails, but it's emotionally very understandable. He bounces around between the head and the heart. He does that so well. He might have been the first one after my dad. He's really a pro.
With you kind of coming from, being a sax player and playing in R&B and jazz, do you detect any of those influences, those early influences from those styles that kind of leak into some of your modern, your last several albums, or even any of them really? Do you pick up any of that influence on any of that work you've done?
I like to think, I hope, that all of the aspects of music that we do, they all inform each other. So yeah, I can't imagine that work, especially because it was a lot of hours. The transcribing of the John Coltrane solo, a note at a time. That kind of stuff. Figuring out how it worked in the chord, and most of the time, why the hell does that work in the chord? Like, if I feel like I never would have thought of that. If I played it, it would have sounded horrible, but he just rocked it. I think it might show up now at this point because I don't play a whole lot of saxophone, although I did pull it out for this last album. I take a sax solo on one of the songs for the first time in a couple albums. I think it probably influences melody. I think I might hear an arc of a melody. It might be horn-like just because of all the years that I put in. Jazz changes, though. It's funny. I have friends that have kind of gone through it like this also, where you're learning your chords, a handful, you go to school, you learn them all, and then you try them all the time.
Right.
Okay, how about something in 13/8? Okay, how about I'm gonna do the sharp 11, and it's gonna go to my half diminished. It's gonna and then it's like, and then once you're through that, you try to find a kind of happy middle ground. I remember about 3 years into college, after all of my songs were just add this and sharp that, and just as like thick, like every extension and every alteration on every chord.
Right.
I remember hearing the Indigo Girls. Oh, I feel that. Let me figure out what they're doing. And it was harmonically very far away from where I was, and it brought me hard back to the other side. It's mostly about the lyric and the melody and the story, and the chord changes. Like, if you're interested in learning one of my songs, it probably wouldn't take you very long. It's not all that rich and thick like it used to be.
Well, and I think that's okay. And for you to be able to have all of those colors to be able to paint with, they're there when you need them. I think it only makes you greater as an artist and as a writer. So, you've got that background and you can draw from it whenever you want to. So I think this is your 9th studio album. If you kind of were to take a step back a little bit, and, I think your first album came out in 97. Obviously, you'd been doing music forever before that. How do you think, kind of big picture, you've changed over the years as an artist, that you've developed? You talked a little bit about this right now in your writing, how you've moved, maybe more from the horn-oriented, some of those chord voicings and things like that you might have been drawn to earlier. How do you think you maybe have developed as an artist, as a writer, since your first album came out in 97?
Well, hopefully a lot with every album. I'm always trying to not sound like the last thing, but still make sense to somebody who liked the last thing, I think the biggest shift in the last 2 albums in particular has been that I just am more interested in writing about true things now. And when I started, I was very interested in the craft itself, and there would be truth, but I would abandon it if the craft called me away from it. Like, if the song, if there was something that felt like it was a little more clever, or a twist of a last line, and it wasn't where maybe the story started in my mind. I also would write about things that I observed, friends, scenarios that I just thought up out of thin air. I would have no problem doing that and fully enjoy that. And so a lot of those songs, although, whether you intend on it or not, the truth tends to simmer up and show up, whether you think you're writing about it or not. There's probably a little bit of what you needed to get out in your song or your poem, or or your painting or your woodwork, whatever. A part of you is going to get out in that. But lately, it's very intentional. I'm really just interested in writing about something real. And also, about 6 years ago, I started writing for an organization called Songwriting with Soldiers, where I sit down with either 1, 2, or up to, I just had a group of 10, actually, veterans, active duty service members, first responders. They tell me whatever part of their story they want to tell me, and it's my job to make a song out of that in a pretty short amount of time, like anywhere between 2 to 3 hours. And I remember when I started, it scared the crap out of me. Like, that's impossible. I've always been the slowest writer in the room, and always actually kind of proud of that. Like, why are we rushing this? Like, you know, we want this thing, you know, ideally to be timeless. Who cares if we finished it in time for lunch? You know, let's work on it. I was that person, but then now that's not a luxury. It's, you know, it isn't a choice, and it feels very important that I get it right.
Well, it seems like it would be so much harder to write about somebody else's story, and as you mentioned, just feeling the weight of wanting to get their story right. Because if we're writing about ourselves, we can, you know, you can move in and out of, you know, other topics that kind of stray away to give, you know, some screening, so to speak, or protection. But when you're telling someone else's story, I can imagine there's a lot of pressure to want to get that right. So I could understand what you're saying. But what a great organization, what a great gift. After you write these songs, like where do they go? What happens with those? Well,
they're available to them. If it's a retreat through Songwriting with Soldiers, we just send them the song. There's another, we work with an organization called The Warrior Path, and they have an app where the song is posted. But it's all very internal, you know. It's like the song is written for them and it is theirs. It's not public yet. We're looking at ways to make that happen, but actually we're looking hard at ways to make that happen. So hopefully that'll be next year-ish.
Wow, how rich that must be. That's really neat that you are a part of that, and how wonderful it must be for these people who just need some healing. In art, music can be such a big part of that. I think we should listen to a song. So we were talking about what song we should play. I think people need to hear, well, the whole album is wonderful, and that's why I'm glad you gave some choices, things we could choose from. So we talked about playing Fallen Angel. Give us a little bit of background, and then we're going to listen to it.
Well, this one's actually a pretty cool follow-up to what I was just saying about being more loyal to the truth. So Fallen Angel I wrote alone. It's actually the only one on this album that I wrote alone. I co-wrote all of the other songs on the album. Fallen Angel is a projected scene. It is a conversation between somebody that I was interested in, and even though we never got together, it was just me imagining it. And we're actually really good friends still, so it's fine. It felt like something just to get it out and get it out there. And it's one of the more fun ones to sing. It feels like a celebration, even if reality didn't quite catch up to the song, but it still feels like a celebration to sing it.
Well, we've all been there. Well, cool. Yeah. Let's check the song out. This is Fallen Angel by Maia Sharp.
She said, honey, don't fall for a fallen angel. I said, baby, you never had wings, but nobody but you could make it look graceful. Don't change for anything. You got somebody who will come between you and the ground. I've been waiting so long for you to come down. I've been waiting for you to come down. She said it was just time I turned that corner. I don't feel like a kid anymore. They show up disguised as each other, chaos and order, and I don't know what I'm fighting for. I said if you need armor, my arms wrap all the way around. said, don't tell me what to do. If I wanna drop to my knees all fucking faithful, well, it's really not up to you. Besides, you with a halo is like me with a crown. Oh, that ain't the way we make a joyful sound. I've been waiting so long. Been affected. I'm not here to get saved anyway. I know if it's love, it don't look like what you expected. And you don't have to tell me today. She said I hurt myself looking. It's time I got found. I've been waiting so long for you to come down. I've been waiting for you to come down. I've been waiting so long for you to come down. I've been waiting for you to come down.
What a song. I think this whole album is so easy to listen to. I remember the first time I listened to it, I sat down, headphones on, listened top to bottom, and I was like, wow, what a gifted writer you are. And I just love your voice too. And I hope this is an album that everybody will either buy a download of, stream, add to their new playlist. You've been doing this, as I mentioned, your first album came out in 97. Things have changed so much in the music industry since then. When you first started recording, people were buying albums and CDs and then downloads. You were, right as iTunes was coming in and everything. How has it been for you as an artist to kind of live through those changes, try to succeed through those changes? What is that like for you now in terms of, where you've come from?
It's been a series of frustration, adaptation, finding the next formula to get through the next 2 or 5 years, however long this particular version of the business is going to last. The hardest wallop was when people stopped actually purchasing music and everybody went over to stream. I've always just kind of recalibrated, and whether it meant like leaning more heavily on live shows, where there's a check at the end of the night. Writing for other artists often led to, or not often, but occasionally would lead to production. So I would be the one who produced the album that had the songs that we were writing. So that was helpful. NYU made me adjunct at NYU. So
nice. Very cool.
5 private students. So if you or somebody you know is about to be a songwriting major there, they might have me as a private instructor.
Very cool.
So yeah, it's been, and I learn a lot from that too. I really, really love that. So it's been a combination of stirring things up and creating things out of nothing, and also trying to react to the right things. I know I'm extremely fortunate that I am still in this 25 years later, and probably 5 different versions of survival. I still get to do something that I love. So I feel very thankful for that.
As a supporter of artists of all calibers, indie artists, top to bottom, I always encourage people, buy a download if they don't have physical CDs, or buy a CD, go to shows, bring a friend, buy some merch, meet the artist, tell them thank you. Like, these are things that I think are so important, because the economy for artists has changed so much. And I just saw a post, and this makes me so angry, that the CEO of Spotify is worth like 3 point something billion dollars, never written a song, and he's 3 times richer than Paul McCartney. And I am sorry, that makes my blood absolutely boil. And then we have artists like you and so many others that are like, this is really tough. This is really tough. And with the economy, being on the road can be oftentimes challenging. So I have a great deal of empathy and compassion for artists today. And really this is where it comes to us as listeners, as fans. We have to do our part to support the artists that we love. If not, they're going to go away. And we can't have that happen. So hope everybody listening takes that to heart. I know I get on the soapbox probably on just about every episode because I think it's so important.
Thank you for saying that. I also forgot to mention, June of 2020, I started a Patreon. So if you like what you hear, there's all kinds of like unreleased, brand new songs, live streams. I do that also. And even after getting through the lockdown where I wasn't able to do any live shows out, I realized how much it was helping me also, just kind of keep me inspired, to keep things fresh. It makes me finish that song. It makes me record the guitar vocal or it makes me even sometimes re-record some old song that was never on my album. It never landed on anybody else's album, but it made me go find it, and now I love it, and now I'm thinking about it for my next album, stuff like that. Like, there's all these things that I wouldn't have explored if it weren't for the Patreon sphere, as I call it. So, yeah, if anybody's interested in that, it's just patreon.com/Maia Sharp.
And I'll put the link to that in the show description. Cool. So wherever everybody's listening, you guys can just scroll down. The links will be there, including to Maia's band page, so you can get all the tour dates and everything. So let's talk about being out on the road. You have some shows planned for early next year and kind of moving forward. Are you going to be out on the road more because you've got an album to support? What are your plans looking like?
I kind of see this album cycle as long as I want it to be. So I'll probably I'll probably be supporting it all through next year. The only confirmed shows right now on the books are in the Northeast. Have a good agent, and we're looking for, we're always looking for more. So, and I'll always have them posted.
Well, it's that time of the year. I know a lot of artists and bands are plotting out their spring and even into summer for next year. So everybody listening, just swing by Maia's page every once in a while and see when she's going to be in your neck of the woods. Go out and see her and just introduce yourself, say thank you. And so I love to ask this question to artists, especially those that have been doing this for a while. And it sounds like you have the opportunity to interact with some up and coming writers and artists. But if somebody came up to you, say after a show, and says, I've been playing piano or I've been playing guitar for a while and I'm starting to write a little bit, what do you think you might say to them? Maybe some things that you've learned on your own journey that you think would be good to impart to somebody who's where you stood, in the early 90s, in the mid 90s?
I think I would have the asterisk first of the way it worked for me isn't necessarily going to be the way that it works for somebody else. Mm-hmm. There are two things that I feel like were very important for me to keep on moving forward. And sometimes, P.S., that was very slowly. Sometimes it was just the love of the process and the love of the work itself with very few returns that kept me moving. Fortunately, there were returns kind of just in time, a lot of the time, to keep things kind of going forward. But a lot of the time it was just like me slugging away at this thing that I love because I love it. The two things that I feel like were key, one is that I tried to get proficient in as many things as I could. I play the guitar, I play the piano, I just logged flight hours. I wrote as often as I could. This leads to the other thing, I collaborate a lot. I write with other writers. I like to record with other people. I mean, there's definitely cave time where I'm alone here in the room, and I do a lot of pre-production and I do a lot of post, but I like to work with other people, get constantly influenced by them, learn from them. Writing songs with other people is how I can basically trace all of the first really good things that happen. It's how I got my first outside recording, like with Cher.
Yeah.
That's the way I got my first record deal. When you collaborate, you give your song twice as many champions, There's somebody else that's out there hoofing it also and trying to get your song heard. You expand the way you maybe would have thought about that lyric or that harmony, or it's just a constant learning process, and it's just kind of better advertising when there is second or third person also on the song, even if it takes getting over, like me. I know a lot of artists might be on the shy side, might be the introvert that just wanted to kind of be alone with a notebook in a room.
Yeah.
But if you can push through that, and I'm not saying that's easy, because it's not, but when you push through it and introduce yourself to people and play them your songs and ask if they want to write, those things tend to lead to the good stuff.
Yeah.
And a community, which then even when everybody is rolling and has a little something going on, you're in a community that can kind of lift each other up and can refer each other and can introduce each other to new people.
Collaborate and become an expert. Know what you're doing and know how to work your way, not only around your instrument, but around the studio. So those are tools that you can bring to the table that could open up additional doors for any artist. So I think those are really, really good things to leave with people. So I certainly appreciate your thoughtful answers, your insights, and I really hope that everybody will buy a download, buy a physical copy if they're available, go see a show. And beyond those things, I think, people adding this album to their playlist, if they hear a couple of cuts or the whole album they just fall in love with, text a link to a friend, share it from whatever platform you listen on. Share it on your socials. This is how we help artists, when we find that we love, to be able to find a wider audience. So doing those things for everybody who's listening can be such a huge help to an artist like Maia. So Maia, I really, really have enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this morning.
Well, thank you so much for asking. I really enjoyed it too. And, along the physical copy line, I did the fiscally irresponsible thing of pressing vinyl. So that's out there too.
Oh, very cool. Nice. So I'll put the link so people can buy those from you. And I would imagine so I'll get all those links put together, and they'll be down in the show notes for everybody. So you can just click a link and get yourself a copy. So thank you for joining me this morning. It was great chatting with you.
Yeah, it really was. Thank you so much, Brian.
And thank you everybody for listening. If you've enjoyed my conversation with Maia Sharp, please share it with your friends on your socials. Give a kind rating or review or subscribe. Those things are massively helpful to little indie podcasters like myself. I look forward to the next time we can walk a stretch of road with another artist. So keep your bags packed and join us on our next journey to the stage. And that is a wrap.